What's up everyone, Foxxy here. Recently I was chatting with a friend of mine from the UK who, like myself, happens to be a collector of video games. Well, we were in the middle of a game of Battlefield 1 and somehow we got on the subject of horrible garage sales that we went to, or bad flea markets, you know, that kind of thing. I got to thinking about it and thought to myself, you know, this might be a great thing to make a video on, because a few weeks ago, I, by far, had the worst garage sale experience of my life. And I would like to share that story with you all today. But before I go on, if you had a bad garage sale or even flea market experience of your own, please do comment below. I would absolutely love to hear about it. Okay, so every day I go online, whether it be at home or at work, whatever, and I'll go and browse around on Craigslist looking at motorcycles for sale. Not even really to buy them, I just like to look and see what's out there. Well, for whatever reason, I was inclined to check the video game section on Craigslist, which is something I never do. Then I saw this ad for a garage sale not even 15 minutes away from my home. I'll read to you all the first two lines and then I'll paraphrase the rest. We are having the largest garage and estate sale of the summer. It's a doctor's house and everything must go as I am moving into a new home. We have the cheapest prices because I am moving in 7 days and need everything to be out of my house. It then goes on to say that they have apparently multiple Ataris with hundreds of games, Super Nintendos, Xbox One, PlayStation, and original Xbox games, and various other stuff. This same listing was also posted on 2 other garage sale / yard sale websites. Immediately, I was very interested in this garage sale, as I imagine most people would be. And thankfully this garage sale happened to start on Friday, which was perfect since that was my day off. Then Friday rolls around. I got up, I don't know, around like 5 in the morning so I can wake up and, you know, get all ready. So I ended up leaving the apartment at around 7:30, give or take. The garage sale wasn't even supposed to start until 8. I end up getting to the garage sale around 7:40 and it is pouring rain. I noticed 5 other cars parked on the side of the road, all of which were waiting for the garage sale to start, and I thought, oh god, I'm gonna have to fight and compete with this many people. Are they all here for the games too? Well, then 8 o'clock hits. Garage sale was still closed. Mind you, there wasn't even like any signs posted of the sale on the streets, so we were all starting to get confused. Did we all somehow manage to get the wrong address? What the hell was going on? Then 3 of us got out of our cars and began talking. Turns out one of them read online that the garage sale was posted to start at 7 a.m., so he got here around 6:30 and has been waiting ever since. So after we started talking some more, it turns out that we all happen to be collectors. However, the funny part about this is that we all collect different stuff. One guy was after the NES and Game Boy stuff, the other was hunting for Super Nintendo and N64, while I primarily was after the Xbox and PlayStation games. So then a guy comes out of the front door and tells us to hang on for a few minutes while he hangs some signs up before he opens up the garage. When he said that, I immediately thought, why the fuck would you put the signs out the day of the garage sale? Why wouldn't you do it the day before? So he leaves for 20 minutes, putting up these signs. In the meantime, the 3 of us were all getting frustrated since now it's 8:30 and the garage sale is still not open. We then begin to talk about the listing itself and questioned what his prices on the games are really going to be. Like he claims it's priced to move and everything must go, but really that doesn't mean anything. Well, finally he comes back and he is walking from the end of the driveway with this medium-sized box of new sealed games. However, they were all brand new Bratz games for the Game Boy. There was like, I don't know, 30, 40 of them, and all 3 of us just looked at each other like, Are you serious? Then the seller tells us to hang on again, he'll open up the garage in a minute. 5 or 10 minutes goes by, and finally the garage opens and the sale officially started. Each of us head immediately to the back of the garage where all the games were at. But right off the bat, there was an issue. The two other collectors were trying to find the NES and Super Nintendo games, but they weren't in any of the boxes or the bins he brought out. They were nowhere to be found. The seller says something along the lines of, "Oh, well, I don't know where they are, so you'll probably have to come back later on when we can find them," something like that. Then they begin to question him about where the Pokemon games are. Again, the seller had no idea and says something like how this isn't his house, so he doesn't know where they put all the stuff the owners are selling. You could tell that the one collector was really pissed off because he was the one that was here for over 2 hours waiting, and nothing that was listed in the ads were even there. Those Super Nintendo games in this picture here, nowhere to be found. And apparently the guy who was selling the stuff has no idea where it is either. The other collector did find a few things. There was a dirty NES with, I think, like a controller or two, Super Mario Galaxy, a boxed Genesis game, which wasn't really even worth anything, and I think he grabbed some empty NES boxes, which were in sort of okay shape. He asked the seller how much he wanted for everything, and the seller says, "What's your offer?" The collector pauses for a second, and I think he offered somewhere around 30 bucks. The seller wasn't into the offer, and you could see it on his face. The collector then goes to explain that the NES boxes were empty, and the cords on the controllers and AV cables were beat to shit. Which, he was right, by the way. I mean, the cords had the wires all exposed, so it wasn't like he was lying to the seller to get a better deal. Anyway, the seller says, "No, I'll take 40. It almost looked like the collector was going to pass on it, but he kind of grimaced, turned to me, and said, "Man, I really don't want to pay 40 bucks for all this." Eventually, he does cave in and gives him 40 bucks. I don't know. It almost felt like to me he bought the stuff because he didn't want to leave empty-handed, having wasted his time for nothing. I totally understand that too, because believe me, there has been numerous times where I've done the same thing. The Super Nintendo collector was rifling through the same two bins that I was going through, which was nothing but PlayStation and Xbox games. I imagine there was like 100 of them in the bins, if not more. The only problem with this whole thing is that I owned all the games. Not even joking about this. I owned every single game he had in these bins, with the exception being like sports titles and Dance Dance Revolution type games. The games he had in here were incredibly common titles that you can find at any secondhand game store for a couple bucks a piece. For example, there was Trigger Man, Dark Summit, Super Trucks Racing, all of the SOCOMs, ATV Off-Road Fury, Conflict Desert Storm, Tony Hawk, Halo, and like I said, many, many sports titles. We spent like 10-15 minutes going through these bins before I made a comment to the other collector saying I'd be happy if I just found one game I didn't have. For shits, I did open a couple of the cases, and the games inside weren't even in that great a shape to begin with. They weren't horrible or anything. I mean, I've seen much worse, but they were to the point where I would question if they would work or not. Eventually, I made my way to the final bin, where there was an Atari Junior with maybe 30 games, broken controllers, but no cords. There was another guy who showed up and asked him for a price on the whole box of Atari stuff. Again, the seller said, "What's your offer?" The guy says 25 bucks. The seller made a face and said, "No way, it's in perfect shape and works, we just tested it out last night." Mind you, there was no cords included in the box, so how could you have tested it out unless he is keeping the cords for some other reason? The guy who offered him the 25 bucks just ended up walking away. I asked the guy, what did you offer for the Atari? Because I didn't even hear. He said 25 bucks. I said back, oh, well, yeah, that's what I would have offered him too. He says, well, I was just hoping for at least a counter offer, but I didn't even get that. Oh well, his loss, not mine. All three of us were pretty pissed off, and only one of us walked out with buying anything. The Super Nintendo guy was probably the most upset, and rightfully so, since he was the one who was sitting here the longest and ended up wasting over 2 hours of his day for no reason. That was by far the worst garage sale I've ever been to, simply for the fact that the guy promised things that weren't there. Not only were the games not there, but there was no MacBooks, not that I would have wanted one. There was no electronics, no furniture, no antiques. Basically, a majority of the stuff that was in the listing wasn't here. And you know, I thought about this a lot when I got home, and I kept questioning those pictures. Outside of the small resolution, I kept saying to myself, why the hell are these pictures so perfectly set up? Everything looks too good. The Pokemon one, for example, let's take a look at this one in detail. As you can tell, there's boxed sets of Emerald, Ruby, Sapphire, Fire Red, and Leaf Green. Or at least, that's what I thought. If you look very closely, you can see past the edges of the artwork there is a thin black piece of plastic. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird. What this looks like to me is DS cases with the Game Boy Advance artwork printed off and placed inside them. I can't believe I was so stupid not to notice that before. So then I did a reverse image search and found that this picture wasn't taken by the uploader. It was actually from a website called Game Case King, where they produce reproduction cases like these. Then I did the same exact thing with the Atari picture and the picture with the loose Game Boy games. Again, these two pictures were taken from other websites. I was so annoyed with myself for not checking this shit out before going to the garage sale, because if I had known that this seller was doing this stupid shit, I would have never even bothered with going to this place. Then that brings us to the last picture, the one with the Super Nintendo and Wii U games. This one confuses the hell out of me. When I did a reverse image search for this one, nothing comes up. So of all the 4 pictures, this is the only one that potentially wasn't taken from another site. But then if that's the case, where are the games? Where was any of this? Because surely it wasn't in any of the bins we were looking in. But I have no evidence to support that claim. Anyway, everyone, that was the story of my worst garage sale moment. Again, please feel free to share some of your own bad garage sale stories with me. I do look forward to reading them, especially if the stories are funny and not so much like super depressing or sad. Till next time, everyone, thank you all very much for watching, and take care.